Right, well, hello. Welcome to episode 4 of Plebcast. Hello. Hello. You're joined by me, Jimmy, again. Louis, hello. Say hello. Give us a wave. We've got Matt returning from last week.
Hello.
Rose was supposed to debut, but she double booked us, so she's fired. And so we got Matt again.
Yeah.
Oh, well. And we've got a newcomer, Katie. Hello. Hello. Tell us a bit about yourself, Katie.
So I'm Katie. I'm a third year ancient history student. I'm also social sec for the Classics Society. So I'm the one who organises your 2 annual balls and the trip, which, if you stay in tune to the end of the podcast, I might give you a little hint why that is.
Oh my God. All right.
God's
Yeah, we've got a USP for this week. And we have a special guest. We have Dr Susanna Phillippo. Say hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Hello.
This is scary but exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're our first lecturer.
Even more scary.
Yeah. Yeah, very excited to have you on.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Right, okay, well, this is now I've just completed my 21 years in Newcastle.
That is impressive.
Quite a scary thought.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's scarier for the people who've had me around for that long or for me. But no, it's very exciting. I mean, it's, especially, I didn't particularly want to come to Newcastle when I first got the job because I didn't know anything about it, and fell in love with it in about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
In fact, I can actually pinpoint the moment I was in Tynemouth Priory on a Sunday afternoon thinking this is going to be okay. Castles, Priory, Sea.
I cleaned that site with Francis.
I've actually been in. Is it?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's such a great site. It's, sorry, this is off topic.
Oh no, yeah.
It's brilliant because you've got the castle, you've got the priory, you've got the Anglo-Saxon history underlying that, and then you've got the First and Second World War stuff as well because it was just fortified headlines. So you've just got so much in one site, almost unique. I think maybe Dover Castle, but that doesn't have a priory. So
oh, okay.
There's plans to try and get the World War I guns on the top refiring.
that is even
Believe
more
it
right.
or not, the National Trust
What the North Sea cruises?
Who are they firing
The
at?
National Trust do actually have gun licences.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God. Is that for Brexit?
Well, maybe that's why there's such a rush to get it up and running now.
The trust has become infinitely more attractive to me.
Yeah.
Well, because the story goes that St Mary's Lighthouse is where it is because the original lighthouse was actually in the firing line of the guns, and they had to move it when it got hit a couple of times. So I'm not sure where I read that story, but
Yeah.
Imagine being the engineer in charge of.
Oh yeah, I was just about to say, feel sorry for the lighthouse man. Wake up in the middle of the night. Yeah, but no. This week's topic is going to be on classical literature because that's what it's what you specialise at.
Yes, specifically Greek, it has to be said.
Yeah.
I had this weird education where I didn't actually learn Latin until I was 27.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never actually learnt Latin yet, to be fair.
I did actually get through a PhD and my first job without knowing any Latin formally.
Really?
Yeah, because Greek and French were my qualifications. So.
Oh, okay.
And then it just got too embarrassing because students kept asking me questions and I kept saying, "You're the one studying Latin, you tell me." And after a while, I decided that wasn't going to wash for the rest of my career. So I did something about it. So.
Yeah. So. Well, I think Matt, you learnt Latin.
Learning.
Sorry.
Very much an ongoing process.
It goes to show that you can do it any time in your life, not miss an opportunity just because you didn't do it at school.
Well, that's true actually.
Louis, do you know any Latin? Have you?
Yeah, I actually was forced to do it at school because I went to a really nice school.
Oh God, yeah.
But no, I don't. I'm better with ancient Greek actually.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to be. Sorry.
Yeah.
The amount of people that when I say I do classics, they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And it's like, "Oh, Latin, ancient Greek, ancient history, philosophy, stuff like that." They always go, "Oh, Caecilius est in horto."
Yeah.
Yes, that is the first line of Latin in probably the main textbook.
Yeah.
There's more to it.
There's a lot more exciting stuff.
The only Latin I know is Romanes Eunt Domus, and it's wrong.
Which of course is wrong, yes.
I watched that again.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Do you know, I've never seen, to my shame, I have never seen that film all the way through. Somebody
have you not?
Introduced me to that sort of scene, so I watched it on YouTube, but I've never seen the whole thing.
Oh,
it's just a gap in my education I have to fill.
It's the best. We talked about it a bit last week on the podcast, but it's the best. It's the best comedy film.
We are hoping to screen it at Quilliams.
Yeah, we might. Yeah,
that would be great. So, scones and Life of Brian, that would be a good combination.
Yeah,
a good cup of tea.
We need to do another film night like we did last year.
I was gonna say.
Because at Quilliams, because they have like an underground cinema.
Yes, I knew about that. I mean, I've never been to it, but it also sounds like a really good fun thing to do.
Yeah, we had one last year.
It's really nice and really cosy.
Yeah.
And we can just sort of just fill it up enough so that people are on like the bean bags in front.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel empty, but it also is not like crowded and cramped.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a really nice night. We'll have another one.
Great.
Yeah, you should come along.
I'd like to actually.
Yeah.
It'll be
It'll be
hopefully, just after exams.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually quite a good time actually.
Yeah, we can all relax after a really heavy week of exams.
Yeah, except
Dr.
that
Phillippo will
we're
have
having
the
to
exams.
mark and to
Oh,
do the
yeah.
module outline for us the next year.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
you don't need to know that. So,
Yeah. Right. So so obviously one of the questions this week will be what is everyone's favourite classical literature, or like everyone's favourite play or text. Hopefully play, because yeah. But like
Then we have a show.
yeah, there we have a show. Yeah.
yeah, fair point.
Yeah. So we'll start with you, Susanna. What's your favourite?
Well, I have to say my absolute favourite piece of Greek literature is Homer's Iliad.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm in love with Hector.
Yeah.
But,
Eric Banner. Yeah.
Everyone is.
Yeah.
But play-wise, tough call. Probably Euripides Hippolytus.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much going on there dramatically and
Yeah.
in all kinds of ways. I was actually asked that as I was going under general anaesthetic once, and the woman decided when I told her the story, she said, "I think you better just think of something happy now."
Yeah.
How
what
does
is-
that compare to Seneca's one? Because I haven't read Euripides' one.
Oh right,
How
really?
does-
As a-
yeah, but
as a-
in part of my IB was Seneca's.
Right,
I
yes.
think. How does it?
Well,
compare?
I mean, Seneca's one is more dramatically over the top. So and also Seneca's Phaedra is much more culpable in the whole thing because
yeah,
in Euripides she admits that she's in love with her stepson to her nurse, and the nurse, meaning well but clearly massively miscalculating, goes and tells this young man that his father's wife wants to sleep with him, and he reacts. He reacts unsurprisingly very badly. In Seneca, of course, she approaches the young man. Well, she doesn't. She has this conversation with him, and then she tells him herself. At which point, he draws his sword, and from there on in. And there's this. I mean, you might remember the scene at the end, which is with after he's been sort of smashed on the rocks, and his father comes in with the bits of him and says, "Where does this bit go?" And there's this kind of. There's a hilarious Lego version of this in Dutch on YouTube. Really
Oh my god, that sounds incredible.
The monster from the sea is this giant moose glove puppet. But at the end you have Theseus with the various bits of Lego trying to fit them together. Now Euripides, predictably, is much subtler than that. And what we get, in fact, is this very moving reconciliation. Hippolytus isn't dead, though he's hideously injured, and is brought back on stage sort of singing in agony, and his father is there, and then there's his reconciliation where he says he forgives his father. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why I like it, because you've got this gap between these these divinities are very fixed on, if somebody's wronged them, then they're going to carry through it to the end, and what happens on the human level, which is much more reconciliatory at the end. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, and it's also got a brilliant messenger speech, which is the description of the tidal wave and this giant monstrous bull and these chariots sort of bolting, and then poor Hippolytus sort of being dragged and calling out. I mean, it's more violently graphic in Seneca. But in Euripides, he calls out to the horses, "Look, I fed you at my own mangers. Why are you killing me?" Which is very poignant, I think. Horses obviously aren't listening because they're terrified, so, even if they could listen. So anyway, sorry.
Oh no, no, carry on. Yeah.
So yeah, that's. I mean, as often with Seneca as compared to Greek tragedy, Seneca is very full-blooded dramatic, sometimes over-the-top dramatic. The Greek tragedy is subtler in its effects, I think, is the crucial difference there. And also, in this case, morally subtler. You might know, Euripides apparently wrote an earlier version of Hippolytus in which, as far as we can tell, there are some fragments. Phaedra did make the direct approach to her stepson. The story goes, whether it's true or not, as it didn't go down too well with the audiences, which is a bit surprising given how much else they put up with in Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this is his second thought with the nurse. And the interesting thing there is that the nurse's part is, after Hippolytus, is the second longest in the play in terms of numbers of lines. So she's clearly a very important character. And okay, she gets things horribly wrong, but it's interesting, as often with Euripides, you get sort of very down-to-earth characters playing this really important part.
Yeah, I've never actually read that.
Have you not?
I've never read it. No. What is it? Is it about the Amazonian?
He's her son.
Oh, yeah.
So Theseus obviously ran off with Hippolyta, or had some kind of relationship with, as he has with a lot of women. And this is their illegitimate son. He is now, having dumped Ariadne on the way back from, or depending on the version, having had Dionysus warn him off Ariadne on the way back from Crete. He's now married Ariadne's sister,
Yeah.
the sort of dynastic marriage, obviously. She's probably younger than him, which is why the attraction to the stepson. But so, and the characterization of Hippolytus is very much in the lines of, he's dedicated to Artemis. He doesn't believe in sex.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't really like sex himself. And this is, of course, what offends Aphrodite, the goddess of love. So this is how the whole thing starts. And he's so he's very much his mother's son in this respect. And to that extent, you get the impression that Theseus is a bit suspicious of him anyway, because it's very much not. Theseus was the opposite, I think, in terms of his recreational pastime. Yes. But yeah, that's the Hippolyta stories in the background of that one. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, it sounds good. Yeah, I'll have to give it a read.
Maybe we should have a spoiler alert. But then I thought, they've been around thousands of years.
Yes.
You don't know, it's your fault.
It's alright, we spoiled Game of Thrones for Louis a few weeks ago.
Did you?
Yeah, we did.
Well, I thought with Game of Thrones the idea was that just everybody dies anyway.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Greek tragedy, really.
Yeah, so this podcast is known for spoiling stuff. Yes. So spoil away.
Just spoilers stuff that happened very, very long ago.
Yeah, but they're still good. So don't. My teacher.
I never said they weren't, Jimmy.
Yeah, but my teacher used to spoil stuff before we read stuff. She'd be like, "Oh yeah, no, this happens at the end." We were like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, and then we'd read it.
That's part of the teaching thing, though, because then you can think about things that happened before without having to read over it again, which is difficult enough.
Yeah. Just don't follow that one, but yes.
Yeah, even in film studies, our teacher used to just show us the ending and be like, "Yeah, that's how it ends. Now let's watch from the beginning."
Well, there are films with which that kind of works. I don't know. Have you seen the? Sorry, stupid question. First of the new Star Wars films. What was it called?
Yeah, Force Awakens.
The Force Awakens. Because we actually discussed this when I did my Greek drama course a couple of years ago, which was that scene where Han Solo dies. Sorry, spoiler alert.
We warned everybody.
In a sense, you know exactly what's going to happen, because dramatically that scene can only go one of two ways. Either Kylo Ren sort of repents and it's far too early in the sequence for that to happen, or Han Solo dies, so you kind of know what's going to happen, but that adds to the suspense. Yeah. So.
Harrison Ford had a massive strop and said he didn't want to do Star Wars anymore. So you can
I'm sure in that film he was given like 4 times the amount of John Boyega's salary just so he could die.
Said he'd do another one because he wants another Indiana Jones, but God only knows why he wants another Indiana Jones.
Yeah, that's not going to be great.
Yeah, the last one wasn't. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't brilliant.
Was that the Crystal Skull?
Yeah.
That was odd.
I liked it. When it came out, I liked it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a good fun film to watch.
I really liked
it.
it.
Not really quite up to the
Indiana
others.
Jones, we've got everything.
Yeah.
Possibly I wasn't paying enough attention as I was watching it, and then all of a sudden everything kicks off.
I think we actually went to see it as the Classic Society organised a film cinema visit for
that.
I mean, slightly, or it might have been the Archaeology Society, but yeah, which makes more sense. But
that does sound like a thing we would do.
Yeah. To watch Indiana Jones.
Or just go to the cinema because we want to.
Yeah.
I think we might have done Troy that way as well, actually, a long time ago.
Good film.
Right, yeah.
Enjoyable. I think I watched that one.
Enjoyable in bits, I think.
It's not accurate.
I think I watched that 3 times by the time I read the Iliad.
I thought it was like, growing up I thought it was completely accurate. I thought that happened then, and then I actually became competent.
It's trying to persuade students that the actual Trojan War lasted 10 years, not however many days it lasts in that film.
Lasts about a week.
I mean, my main problem with the film is I once said in the seminar on this topic of adaptation was that it's not Homer, at which point my colleagues said, well, obviously it's not. I said, well, no, but my point is that it's not as good as Homer because the things it's trying to do aren't as powerful. Although I did have a really interesting discussion with Lauren Emsley, who's now one of the teaching assistants.
Oh yeah, she's on one of our modules at the moment. She's with Professor Visser.
Right, yes, yeah. When she was doing her masters, we were doing classical adaptation as part of that, and we were looking at the climactic fight sequence in that one, saying actually, because I mean, book 22 of the Iliad is of my favourite piece of literature, my favourite book, because it's just written with camera angles. I mean, not that he had a camera, but the whole thing all the way through, you got close-ups and the rest of it. And so if you want a shooting script, just follow Homer. And actually, interestingly, they do at points. I mean, you do get the close-up on Hector's feet as he's being dragged along, and the close-up on the head as it's dust, which is there in Homer. You just don't get as much during the fight sequence.
I wonder if that's deliberate, or if just a filmmaker and a filmmaker of his day.
Yeah, it's
Thinking the
interesting.
same.
Yeah.
Well,
on the same
sometimes it's to do with, because I mean, obviously, one of the really effective things is in Homer is that Andromache, his wife, isn't there, and we get the scene cut to her back in the house making his hot bath for him, and then she hears the sound. And actually, I think cinematically that could be really effective, but it's much less obvious than what they do in having her there on the walls in the film. I think that was a sort of if you like, an obvious filmmaker choice.
Yeah.
But I think if they'd stuck with Homer, it would have been better. So, I mean, the best scenes of that film were the ones where they stuck to Homer, like the Prime Achilles one. Again, that's in my opinion.
Did you watch Troy Fall of a City?
The BBC series? Yes, I did. Actually, I did stick with that to the end.
Yeah. Me and Matt were the exact same. We watched 6 episodes, and then I just forgot about it.
The last 2.
Well, I missed the
Well,
last.
again, I mean, what did you think, actually?
I liked it. I knew the inaccuracies.
Yeah, but
He
that's
still
not
don't give Ajax a shield.
Oh
No, that's true, actually.
He's still got a warhammer. And I don't understand.
Yeah, that was
I
so
don't know
weird.
why.
Yeah, well,
I
Shield
thought
is
Troy
less
was so
impressive, I suppose. That's
Yeah.
or at least for a modern audience.
Mm.
I mean, I thought there were really interesting things that they were doing with it. My main problem
Yeah.
was that the moral centre was all over the place. I mean, that dreadful line at the end where Paris says to Menelaus before he dies, "Well, at least I know that Helen and I had something that you'll never have." Yeah, does that compensate for the fact that your entire city and family have been destroyed? You were in love with each other. Great. Sorry.
Yeah.
Throws out his eye and run away.
But they did. They were at least trying to do something very interesting with the gods.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in terms of the Andromache Helen sort of relationship, I thought was actually quite effective. They were having trouble with Odysseus, who, in fairness, they were giving him this role of all these ruthless and sneaky things that he actually did. But then because they sort of thought, well, he's the hero of the Odyssey, so they then tried to exculpate by saying, well, he was doing it for the good of the army, or because it was he was doing it under orders, and that somehow just didn't work, especially not when he chucks the baby off the walls at the end. So, having all kinds of angst about it, but still doing it. But I did think there were a lot of interesting things there. And I think it would be a really interesting one for. I think Amy was actually quite interested at one stage in sort of studying this, to look at these questions of adaptation and what you change and what you use and how it. Because it doesn't matter that it's inaccurate. People have been writing inaccurate versions of Homer for thousands of years. I mean, the entire Middle Ages and early Renaissance, that part of your podcast, really, sort of saying about. I mean, they knew about the Trojan myth mainly through the medieval tradition, which has got elements of Homer, but very different ones. When we went, you weren't with us for Troilus and Cressida on Wednesday, were you? You were
I
there
wasn't.
for Macbeth.
No. We were in Edinburgh then.
Oh
It's
yeah.
all right. We had two colliding Shakespeare things this week, which was that on Wednesday. The Tyneside Cinema had a live cinema relay of the RSC's Troilus and Cressida, which was the night before the National Theatre Macbeth at the Theatre Royal, which I booked tickets for the students months ago. But Troilus and Cressida is so rarely done. And it's this version of the story of Troy, but through the medieval lens, and incredibly modern in the sense that it just debunks everybody, except possibly Hector, although even there. And you've got this character Thersites, who, like in the Iliad, who's this sort of lowlife who slags everybody off. Well, he does it throughout Shakespeare's play, this time in a broad Glaswegian accent, which was kind of cool. But and it's very, that idea of undercutting, ideas of heroism, for a play written in 16, whatever it was, it's very modern in that sense.
Yeah.
They had Agamemnon played by a woman, and Ulysses, which was really interesting.
Wow.
And dressed with a wig clearly to suggest Theresa May. Which was kind of works actually. The sort of leader surrounded by huge egos, which are all causing him problems. So anyway,
That's interesting about the relevance of everything. The fact that there's a modern, what are they called? Inspirations. A modern adaptation of a medieval play that is in itself an adaptation of a classical story.
Yes.
Three
I mean, the way it sort of
however
goes.
many thousand years of history.
Which is really interesting, actually. And I mean, Macbeth, similar.
Macbeth was sort of post-apocalyptic, which I'm not sure worked entirely, but it was very interesting.
It was very interesting, yes.
I did very much enjoy it. I enjoyed Othello as well, which I saw on
Friday. I was
Friday.
going to ask you about that.
That was modern costume, but everything else
was straight.
was period,
which
I really liked.
That was a really good production. I didn't realise the black actor playing Othello, it was his professional debut.
Really? He was wonderful. He was really good.
He was very good, actually, as was Iago, but he was a much more seasoned.
Yeah, you
sort
could
of-
tell.
So,
A lot of theatre this week.
yes, well,
Yeah.
three Shakespeare
Cultured
plays in 4
week.
days. And as I said, it's closest you get to the experience of the Athenians when they went to see tragedy. They saw 3 tragedies on one day, and then a satyr play, and then 3 tragedies on the next day. So you saw 9 tragedies in 3 successive days.
Yeah.
And you understand why they had these satyr plays with these drunken sort of lascivious creatures, because you need to laugh after this stuff. Otherwise you go out and slit your throat. Because you have 3, I mean, Troilus and Cressida isn't technically a tragedy, but it's kind of a black comedy, but also a tragedy. It's called a pogrom play. So that and Macbeth, and then Othello, which is probably the most depressing of all the tragedies.
Yeah.
It's a good guy who gets completely brought down. And I kind of needed some light reading last night, I have to say.
Yeah, that's why this is a.
Anyway, so you asked me, what about your favourites?
Oh yeah.
Oh, mine is
Go on,
without a doubt Aristophanes' frogs.
Yeah,
Possibly
yeah,
because I'm
good
still
choice,
a child
yes.
inside. But
Oh yeah, but
there's-
that scene.
I feel like
There's
Aristophanes will appear a lot here.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's the one thing I saw. I was at some school for learning Greek, and they did Aristophanes' Clouds in translation, but as a production, and it was one of the funniest things I've seen.
Yeah.
But
that would work.
there's 2 particular bits in one particular bit in Aristophanes' Frog, which is I can't remember who the playwrights are in the
Euripides and
underworld.
Aeschylus.
Euripides and Aeschylus, and they are having a debate, come insult battle about who is the better playwright.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which one is it who is attacking the other one, but he says he says to the other one, he's like, but with all of your lines I can add the phrase lost his bottle of oil.
It's a great scene, that one.
And it sort of starts and then it keeps going and it just keeps going and there's so many examples.
Yeah.
And have me in stitches.
I mean, it's funny even reading it on the page, but you could imagine that in production where it sort of comes in. And I think there's one where Oedipus loses his little bottle of oil. I could be wrong, but it's I mean, the interesting thing about that is such simple humour at one level, very in a sense very childish, but it's just hilarious because the way it fits in.
Aristophanes is incredible. Every play I read, I've read a few plays. I don't know how many plays I've read, but in college we were supposed to do frogs. But we did Clouds instead, and we did Lysistrata.
Right, yeah.
And all of us, we were all just really childish in our class. We all just dying laughing every day, every page we read, and it's just so funny. And I've got we'll carry on talking about yours, Matt, but my favourite play is Lysistrata by Aristophanes because it's the funniest thing I've ever read. Because it's just so it's so on your nose, and it's so.
I'm at a disadvantage because I can't teach anything that's quite that blunt because I get really embarrassed. So luckily I left St Andrews before it became compulsory as a text. But but I mean I'm told that, and I'd actually quite like to see a production, maybe just once, but quite like to see a production of it because it is. I mean the humour all the time is just it's sharp, it's funny, it's using every possible weapon that there is in the comic armoury.
It's just like if anyone doesn't know what Lysistrata is, it's a play about it's set during the Peloponnesian War, and all the men are off fighting, and there are 3 Athenian women and 1 Spartan woman, who we said last week has got in the play in the Penguin version. It's got a different accent to show the different dialect.
A different look as well, I believe.
She's
supposed to be uglier.
She's supposed to be uglier, and. We just take the piss out of it.
I mean, it's very likely that the translation there reflects the Greek because he does write different dialects for.
So the whole story is them to stop the war. They withhold sex.
Yeah.
And I thought that's just genius. And then all that, and then they don't just withhold. At the end, they kind of barricade the treasury.
Yes.
On the Acropolis. But the main humour bit is with them withholding the sex, and it's so rude and it's so it's just so I don't know, it's so childish and it's just so it's just so broad. And it's really funny. It's like a Monty Python sketch.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, it's really interesting. I was talking to when I do Aristophanes' Wasps in my first year tragedy common history module, and I was talking to one of the students. And he said, because it's true actually, very little modern comedy depends on that kind of absurdity. I mean, Monty Python, before that, my parents' generation, The Goon Show, The Muppet Show, all of this was very much you take a completely bizarre out there situation and then you sort of play around with it. I think the parallel I give them, they do recognise is Danger Mouse.
I love Danger Mouse.
Again, like when the Baron Greenback tries to take over the world with his custard gun, and then you sort of develop the logic of it. And because he was saying, this is really weird, it's quite hard to get your head around. I said, well, if you go with it, because in Wasps you end up with talking dogs and a cheese grater who gets asked questions. And so it's just brilliant. I've always liked that kind of weird off, and I mean even Lysistrata, which is a slightly more realistic or at least imaginable situation, but the extent to which it goes is obviously absurd. And as you say, Monty Python, I think they were very much in that. I mean, most of them were classically trained, of course.
They were, yeah. I think a lot of them get it from like the old comedy, Greek old comedy.
And it is interesting that it's a type of comedy that resurfaces at various times, but was never particularly popular throughout the Renaissance tradition. The French 17th century didn't know what to make of that at all, but they were very stiff.
Some of the translations that I read of some classical things are hilariously stiff upper lip.
Oh yes. Well, there's this delightful thing that in the Little and Scott 19th century, but still current main English Greek dictionary, you can tell when a word is by Aristophanes and really rude because they translate it only into Latin. So you get the rough idea of what they're meaning without.
There was something that I remember from one of the Greek in Action modules. It might have been first year actually. There's something about the garlic bread selling.
Yes, garlic bread selling hostess. Yes, Aristophanes has a word for a garlic bread selling hostess. Possibly hostess in the sense of keeper of house of ill repute.
Yeah, hostess in inverted commas.
But it's just, I mean, he's like
overly welcoming.
But he's like Shakespeare in that sense. He just invents language. So there's that one. There's the word for somebody who eats secretly by night. Writer, and nukti lathroiophagos, which is a wonderful word.
Well, you come up with is it a frog's ribbit?
Oh,
is it
Brachiocoax?
Yes, yeah.
Coax. What is that?
And the Pompholuga paflags. I can't pronounce it. Pompholuga paflasmacine, which is in the chorus that the frogs sing. It's meant to imitate the sound that a bubble makes as it rises to the surface and pops. Bubble splashifications, I think, is how they usually translate it. But I mean, he's just having fun, and it's a bizarre word. So, what about you, Katie? What's your?
If I had to talk about a text for a long period of time, it would
Funny
probably
that, you do.
have to be Seneca Apolycantosis.
Oh right, yeah, I remember you mentioned that.
So I'm studying it. Well, I studied it last year with Claire Stocks, who was a fantastic lecturer.
Yeah.
And at the moment I'm rediscovering it for my dissertation. It's a Menippean satire, which is a rare form of satire. We don't completely know what that means, but it's a wickedly funny text. It's very short, so you can read it quite easily all in one sitting. And the recently deceased Claudius, it's his descent up to heaven, well, down to hell, but first he goes to heaven, mucks about a bit, gets told off by Augustus and gets chucked down to hell to roll and play dice in hell forever. But it's written by Seneca to entertain Nero at the Saturnalia. So the Saturnalia is a festival, everything is topsy-turvy, but it also kind of implies that Claudius's whole life was topsy-turvy. He let slaves and freed men and women run amok, and it's just really funny to the point that Claudius's last mortal words are, "Oh dear, I think I may have made a mess of myself," which literally means he poos and then dies. So it's...
If you're gonna go.
Seneca, he puts some very clever bits to entertain Nero in his inner circle and think, oh, aren't we clever, we know these things. But then he doesn't shy away from toilet humour.
Yeah.
So,
which is not what you associate with Seneca
no,
at all.
You don't.
He's a very complex character, I think.
But there's all sorts of literary theories that he uses this vulgar Latin to mock Claudius.
Yeah.
But then again, it's just a funny text.
Yeah.
Hercules in heaven sees Claudius and thinks it's a 13th labour. And attempts to sort of hit him over the head and get rid of him and sort of... It's just
does he get turned into a pumpkin at the end? Is that the...
Well...
That's what I've always understood, but I've never read it.
He doesn't get turned into a pumpkin. The name of the play is kind of a mockery of... Well, the whole play is a mockery of the deification, but it's a play on words like becoming a god, but becoming a god.
Oh, yes, a gourd, yes.
Like, it implies that his head is like a pumpkin in that he's thick, basically. He's not very
Claudius,
smart.
honestly.
I've never read any Seneca. I really...
he's really good. Sorry. his tragedies are very, very over the top, to the point that people nowadays would think, this is a bit much.
Is it like really
blood and
gory?
guts everywhere? The Thyestes
yeah.
is quite grueling to read.
It's the worst. I mean, we do this, and I think Dr. Stotts does it in her Death and Dismemberment. We had a fight over whether we could both teach it or not.
Yeah.
But it's also in my European drama one, where it's just. I mean, I don't know if you know this story, but it's Agamemnon's father and his uncle, and the uncle Thyestes has had an affair with the father Atreus' wife, and Atreus, who is against stiff competition, the single most unpleasant character in all of Greek literature. All of classical literature, I think.
Not got any redeeming.
Wants his revenge, so he decides he's going to do this by pretending to have a reconciliation, and then have a feast, and then kill his 3 children and serve them up to his father in a feast. Which we see happening on stage. I mean, we don't see the killing on stage. We hear that described, but we actually see him doing the eating and drinking on stage. And there's this terrifying line where Atreus is there and sort of and then tells Thyestes, and then Atreus says, "Actually, this isn't enough. I wanted you to know you were doing it while you were doing it." And you sort of think, I mean, as a study in the sort of psychology of revenge, it's very powerful.
Atreus, he gets
terrifying.
dressed up in like a sacrificial priest's garms as he's hacking limbs off his nephews, and there's a bit where he roasts the organs, and the organs are screaming on the spits.
Don't do this if you're squeamish. It used to be the last one that we did in our series before Christmas, and I thought that's a really bad idea. Especially as we then did it alongside Titus Andronicus, where it's similar plot, but they get baked in a pie, which before Christmas was a particularly bad idea. So we switched the. But I mean it's. Dramatically and in terms of description, it's incredibly effective. But rough. The interesting thing there is that we're used to Jacobean Elizabethan sort of tragedy through Shakespeare, but Shakespeare is actually pretty restrained. I mean, you get that Titus Andronicus, which isn't, of course, that's not just by probably not just by Shakespeare, and you get the infamous blinding scene in King Lear. But you read some of his other stuff. I mean, I still remember I was sitting in Edinburgh University Library reading this version by a character called Thomas Goff of the Oresteia. Now that story is bad enough as it stands. The wife kills husband, son kills mother. But this is worse. I mean, when Orestes takes revenge on his mother and her mother's lover, and this was the bit which had me going back, whoa, in my seat. They have a baby child, and on stage in this description, they take the child, they stab the child, and they spurt the blood into the mother's mouth. Sorry, this is after the watershed. Before they kill them, and just the thing is, seriously. And then, I mean, everybody dies. Even those. So Electra dies, Pylades dies, Pylades' father dies. He just drops dead of grief on stage. And the only person who doesn't die, who dies in the original, is Cassandra, the Trojan prophetess, and she only stays alive so that she can pop up at every possible opportunity, saying, "Ha ha ha ha! It's all going really horribly wrong for you." So I mean, it's even worse than Seneca.
Yeah,
It's just
Seneca's Medea as well. So Medea, it's not enough that she's just killed both her children. She says that if she's pregnant, she will scrape it out with her sword.
Oh God, I forgot that bit.
Oh God.
Medea does some grim things.
And in that one, she kills one of the children in front of Jason.
Really?
The
one
child
of them's already
on
dead, and then
stage.
It makes Game of Thrones sound like a Disney
I was
film.
thinking-
It does actually. Come to think of it, maybe that's why I don't cope with Game of Thrones. Cause I get too much of this in my professional life.
There's so many horror films now
Flashbacks.
that are supposed to be just brutal gore, like all the Final Destination films. There's lots of slashers films like that, but there's none of them that are the slasher and the like emotional side. Quite like these would
the two
be.
together.
If there
yeah.
was, it would absolutely ruin me. I wouldn't be able to.
That would you to sleep at night. You can't see Gollum on Lord of the Rings.
Oh, don't.
My brother did that, so he hates Gollum.
Well,
You
I
can't
can
look at him.
Yeah, it would freak.
It's
I
so-
can see why that would freak you out. Yeah. So-
My nan, when she watched that, she was like, "Oh, Andy Serkis has lost some weight, hasn't he?" Yeah, she thought. Didn't realise it was CGI.
So was that in the Death and Dismemberment module that you did?
It was, yeah. It was the first text. So it's strange that it was branded Neronian literature, but it is Neronian literature because it was written after Claudius had popped his clogs, as the text would say.
Yes. So,
Yeah. What's your favourite classical text, Louis?
It was Antigone for a while,
right.
Oh.
but then I went to see it performed by a university, and it just ruined it for me. I could never look at it the same way again.
Really? Why?
I don't know. The woman who played Antigone just shouted the whole time.
Yeah,
there was no emotion apart from anger.
Yeah, that's
was
often a
just
fault that people do with that play, and it doesn't work.
There was no variation, and I just sort of sat there like, this is single-handedly ruining the literature, which I thought was actually quite a strong reaction, but it was what I felt. So it's got to be the Odyssey for me.
Oh yeah.
I just love everything about it. I love Telemachus his journey into becoming a man, Penelope's sort of deceitful behaviour, the suitor's arrogance, and then Odysseus as a hero. I just love the whole thing. And it was the first piece of literature that I studied in depth. So it was my first year in sixth form. It was the first epic I read all the way through, and did an exam and stuff. And I actually genuinely had a passion for it. I thought it was so interesting, and all the stories the Circe, the Cyclops, everything. I love it. I would love to study it again, but I don't know if I will get the chance to.
See, that's not normal. Which they've never made a good film of that.
No,
I
we
was
haven't.
saying that to
we've
Phoebe.
discussed this.
And you should be able to.
Yeah.
There's a made-for-TV film version of it with Greta Sacchi as Penelope and Irene Pappas, the central Greek character, as Odysseus' mother. And bits of it are good. But again, it just sort of.
I don't know if that's the one I mentioned last week, but we talked about our favourite films last week, classical films, and I said The Odyssey because I like laughing at the one that I've watched. Because it's so bad at points, and then and some of the stuff, some of the graphics and stuff are awful. And it's just completely.
Well, they have a dreadful version of Hermes where he's a bit like Peter Pan in Kent. He's
Yeah.
very camp, and you can actually see the sort of the fact that they've got him against a blue screen.
Yeah.
It's so poorly done.
You can see some controlling the Cyclops' arms.
Yes, Cyclops is
Yeah.
pretty rubbish in that as well. On the other hand, Scylla in the Scylla and Charybdis scene is completely terrifying.
Yeah.
The monster there, and Poseidon, he's a face coming out of a wave, so sort of a 3D. It's really, it's really effective though. Actually, so I mean, the weird thing is that they could do things that were so good with that, and things which were so poor. It's really strange.
You could do so well with an Odyssey film, the amount of special effects and CGI that go on there, it'd be amazing.
But would it feel rushed if you did it all in hour and a half, 2 hours?
Yeah, well, that's
it probably needed to be. I mean, because I think
that
it's quite a long one, the TV film actually. I think it's well over 3 hours. They do miss out a lot, and they simplify the chronology, which is the other mistake that they all make.
I know that's it for me. I just think it's so cool. I just think how the whole idea of it is just so interesting. And then I remember reading the Iliad and then thinking how much was taken from the Odyssey and the Iliad into the Aeneid, and thinking this is so inferior.
I'll get into trouble with my Latin colleagues by saying this, but a postgraduate colleague showed me this thing. I don't know if it was on YouTube or something, but it's this picture of this girl with her cat, and the cat is the Iliad and the Odyssey, and then she draws round this cat on a piece of paper, and then the outline is the Aeneid.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean that's mean because it's a very different type of epic, and it's clearly in its own terms, it's brilliantly written. There's all kinds of stuff there, but it doesn't do for me what Homer does.
No,
so,
same.
For whatever reason that is, except possibly for book 2, The Fall of Troy, which is obvious reasons for that. But I mean, it's interesting because I was the Cyclops incident, because there's a bit of a Cyclops incident in book 3, which is it's very effective because they've got this volcano in the background. It's sort of Sicily type setting. Very atmospheric, but it doesn't have that mixture of the normal and the monstrous and the slight poignancy that you get in the Homer episode. So the bit with the sheep, which gets me every time. And I'd only realised recently, a student pointed out to me, of course, that sheep gets eaten. Which is really sad because they take the sheep off to their ship and then they sacrifice themselves.
Resourceful Odysseus.
Yeah, I know,
waste
but
a sheep.
Poor sheep.
I do remember finding particularly funny the bit when Odysseus, the Cyclops, asks him his name.
Yes.
And Odysseus says, "I'm no one." And he's like, "That's your name." Like, yeah, I'm no one. And then eventually they run away and the Cyclops on that side and he's screaming, "I'm looking for no one. Where's no one?"
What? You're looking for no one, alright, mate?
I think that seems really sad when the ram comes out and Cyclops goes, "No, why are you the last one out today? Are you sad about your master's eye?" That one gets me.
It gets me every time, and it's hard to know how the original audience would have responded to it. But I mean, it doesn't have to be there, and it really just sort of changes the whole thing sort of around. Of course, I mean, there's this deep irony behind this. This godless man-eating monster has been, and this you can imagine him sitting there thinking, for all the times this godless monster has to show he's got a heart. He has to do it now when I'm clinging to the sheep and want to get out this door. What a moment to choose. So you've got that side going on, but I think there is the genuine poignancy there. If you get the chance, I think there is a version you can still get online. The comedy group, the Penny Dreadfuls, who do stuff for the BBC, they do slightly offbeat, humorous versions of classical literature. They have one of the Odyssey, and it's hilarious, absolutely hysterical. They have that because when he comes in with his sort of sheep, and he goes, "Oh, my little sheepy," and Odysseus goes, "Oh, he's a total dork." But that thing there, it's played differently. Is that Odysseus is about to sort of announce foolishly who he is, and one of his men says, "Oh, he's nobody." And then of course later on Odysseus passes this off as this sort of brilliant trick, and his men says that wasn't quite how it happened. So no, I mean it's just about an hour long in total. I think it was 2 episodes, but it's hilarious. It's a really good version of it if you want a humorous version to listen to.
I mentioned last week, and I'll mention it again because I'm determined to find someone else who's seen it. But have you seen the Sinbad with Brad Pitt?
I haven't. Just seriously,
there's a Sinbad cartoon that's based off the Odyssey.
Oh gosh,
I'm determined to find someone else who's seen it.
I'll have to. Presumably, it's gettable on YouTube, or is it? Sorry, is that illegal?
I'm not sure. I had it on DVD. I got it for Christmas, many years ago on DVD.
Ask if I can borrow it sometime and have a look.
I'm not sure if I still got it, but no, it has the Cyclops, it has the Sirens, and it has, I can't remember who else it has. It might have, who is the sorcerer again called?
Circe.
The
one that turns into pigs.
Tiresias,
yes,
possibly.
The witch.
Yeah.
Yes.
The witch. It has them. And I didn't know it. I thought that was the story of Sinbad when I watched it because I was really young.
Reading the Odyssey, good lord, this is similar.
Interesting mythical conflation there. Yeah. Well, there was I didn't have time to show any clips of it in the Odyssey module last year, but there was a French-Japanese anime collaboration called Ulysses
32.
32 or 31. 32? Anyway, whatever it's called. But actually it's surprisingly good. I mean, obviously some of it, Telemachus is really irritating, as is that stupid little robot. No. Sorry.
I've just been lent the box set. I haven't watched it yet.
But it's, because again, what's interesting there is if people are, often students are trying rather oversimplistically say, all the gods are very sort of benign and benevolent in the Odyssey, and it's, broadly speaking, probably yes, but there's a lot of complexity there, and they're really sinister in this stage. They're sort of like massive computerized things. And they have a couple of very dark episodes in that, and some, and of course the animation is great because it's the Japanese sort of tradition. So it's really worth. I've got the box set in my office, so. But
watch that for a movie night.
Actually, that would be a good plan. Actually, the theme tune is awful, as they so often are. But
have you ever seen "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou"?
Yes. That's a brilliant.
That is really good. Yeah. And that was my.
I have. Yeah, I remember. I don't think it made it when we did our myth journals.
Yeah, it made it on mine. It made it on my list.
It didn't make it to mine. We had to do a myth journal.
Yes, I heard all about this from Dr. Regados.
For Dr. Regados.
So did fun, actually.
I had great fun. I'm going to tell everyone about my favourite one now. But my favourite one was Budweiser in the 1920s brought out special editions of what's the cupbearer that Zeus takes
Ganymede.
Ganymede. They brought out a special one where Ganymede was holding the Budweiser as like the ambrosia.
Oh right.
Oh yeah.
And they made this whole edition of bottles, plates, steins, all sorts, where this eagle has Ganymede. Yeah,
actually,
like a whole collectible thing.
Could you imagine that, having your loveliest china up on there?
Do you think they had
on the side?
Do you think they had the faintest idea what was behind this?
It's Ganymede in one claw and the Budweiser in the other claw. And it's the strangest thing. I don't know where they came up with it.
It's seriously odd, isn't it? And it's
that's incredible.
But yeah,
that's really impressive, actually.
The ambrosia, by the way, is not just the custard. It's the liquid that the gods drank to make them immortal.
Or food, technically, I think. Yes, the nectar is the liquid and ambrosia is the...
Oh, I didn't realise that.
It could have been a custard as well.
It could have been a custard,
They could. That's where...
Get the impression it's fairly...
Good taste.
Get the impression it's fairly insubstantial food, but
yeah.
So custard probably is about it. That's really interesting. It's one of these examples of how they use it.
It's the strangest thing.
I probably shouldn't say this, but the award for equality and diversity, which is called Athena Swan.
Oh yeah.
And Athena herself very dubious role model in all kinds of ways. But swan, I mean, let's face it, in Greek mythology, what happens with the swan?
Never.
This is not an association that you want for something which is supposed to be about sort of female equality.
Just remember, for a marked piece of work saying, Budweiser are not trying to say that if you drink Budweiser, it's okay to rape young boys.
Exactly. Well, similarly, the Athena swan is not suggesting that turning yourself into a swan to rape a woman is a good idea. But I just don't think anybody thought about it.
Yeah.
It's like in a different way. The one of the bed companies, I forget which one, was quoting Shakespeare's The Tempest. We are such stuff as dreams are made of, and all our little life is round by sleep. I said, you do realise that's a speech about death? has nothing to do with sleeping at all.
The worst one is the 9/11 memorial.
The 9/11 memorial?
Yeah, there's a memorial to 9/11, and it quotes something. I think it might be the Iliad, but it's like they think it's a quote meaning peace, but it's not.
Oh God, yes.
It's up there in a massive monument.
Misunderstood quotes are brilliant.
Yes.
It's not a classical example. I don't think it might be, but the blood is thicker than water is completely the other way around.
Really?
It's meant to be the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb.
All right.
Which actually means that friendship is stronger than family bonds. Whereas everyone uses it to say that family is stronger than friendship.
Do you know, I never knew that. You've just told me something I didn't know.
I think so.
But,
You could be.
Might be chatting
like
complete balderdash.
Like a lot of stuff.
Like a lot of what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Have you had the chance to? I mean, you obviously went to see Antigone once. Have you ever had the chance to see any Greek or Roman tragedy in performance?
Yeah, I've actually seen Lysistrata live.
Oh yes, you mentioned that. Yeah.
And it was hilarious. It was like a World War One, like.
Oh right, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's like instead of the Peloponnesian War, it was to end World War One.
Yes.
And all the three women who were supposed to be like Athenian, they were played by women.
Yeah.
And the Spartan was played by a man with a beard in a dress.
Yes, yeah, that was.
And he was Scottish.
Okay, yeah. They tend to make the Spartans Scottish.
Yeah. I think it's because on the Penguin translation, it's like Scottish.
Yes, it is.
It has the note before.
Right.
I have rendered this in the Scottish dialect.
Yeah. But that was really funny, and it was faithful to a point. Like it was faithful, like because it was adapted to World War One. You had to change a lot of stuff. Like the ending, It was like in the form of a game show. Oh, right, which was weird. And there's a character, I think she's called Reconciliation.
Yes.
And apparently it was played by an actress, but apparently it's supposed to be played by a sex doll a lot because it doesn't have any lines.
Oh, I see. Right. Yes.
So it's just like he's supposed to, I think in ancient times, or what my teacher who taught us it has seen before. I can't remember which one it is.
probably what they've seen before. I mean, we wouldn't know about the original, but sorry, it's been boring.
But I think it was one time they just used a big blow up sex doll to play Reconciliation, and they just dragged it around the stage.
Right.
But it was played by an actual woman this time. But it was really good, and they didn't hold anything back. Instead of like, they would have had like leather phalluses, but they had like fluffy ones.
Okay.
But all the times where like you see them, they had like trench coats, and they were supposed to be like flashes, so like really huge phalluses. It was really weird. This like really pink fluffy thing flopping about, and no, it was really funny. Yeah, and I went to see Medea.
Oh right. Oh yes. Was that the weird one at Hexham? Sorry, the one which I heard was slightly weird.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The weird two-man Medea.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So did I actually.
I just went to be honest for a day out.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
Yeah, but I actually really liked it. Was it Euripides one?
Yes, Euripides.
It wasn't Seneca. I can account for that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's tricky, isn't it? I always think sorry, getting a bit pompous about this, but I always think that the test with these is, you can try new and slightly different things, as long as it's not detracting from anything crucial in the original, which can sometimes happen with sort of distracting things. and as long as it's at least attempting to be as powerful as the original, if it sort of slightly misfires, then give it a go and do some interesting things. Because they also did Actress of Dionysus. They did Antigone in Hexham either last year or the year before, and again it was partly adaptation as well as sort of text. But I think a lot of that actually worked. Not all of it, but I think it's when you put in something which is just really distracting that's problematic.
I remember, I think it was first year, so 3 years ago now, seeing, it was called Antigone.
Oh, yes.
People's Theatre.
That's right, the
which
one.
confused me
yes,
for the first
right,
45 minutes before I realised
you hadn't done my module, right? Yes,
it was Antigone, just said in a French accent, and it took me 45 minutes to realise. I was there like, oh no, I recognise some of these people, but who the hell is Antigone?
I'm sorry, I should have briefed you on that beforehand,
but that was good.
Yes, it was good actually. I mean, that's an interesting one because it's obviously there was a big vogue in French avant-garde theatre around the 20s, 30s, 40s for using Greek tragedy as a sort of a thing to play off, and Henri's Antigone is the most famous, and it does play around and it's different in a series of ways, but it was a good production.
So it takes me back to what I thought of when Louis said that his favourite play was Antigone. It's just the fact that from when I remember reading Antigone, I remember reading it and it's sort of about just over 1,500 lines long.
Yes.
And from what I remember, the first 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 has nothing going on when I was reading it the first time round. And then in like the last 400 lines, again, spoiler alert, everybody kills himself. There's like one person left alive. I just said like, wow.
Yeah, and I think especially it's one of the things I'm always trying to say to the first years is that on the page, you really have to work hard to sort of make this, and that's why except in your case, going to a bad production can put you off, but going to something which has got good bits in it, because a lot of this kind of stuff it obviously doesn't work as well when you're just reading it. I mean, the play that they did, I think 3 years ago now, Aeschylus' Suppliant Woman, you read that on the page, it looks the dullest play in creation ever written. Because it depends, as that production really showed, so strongly on the chorus and on the fact that they're singing and dancing, not just speaking their lines. And seeing it with that kind of production was electrifying. It was absolutely brilliant. But on the page, I mean, it was not a play I'd ever rated at all. And so I think it's this idea of how it comes to life. And you miss so much without the music. We went to see, again at the People's Theatre, a version of Trojan Women, the Euripides play, which is in Solomon, which it's often regarded as an anti-war play. It's not that simple, but it's obviously looking at what happens to collateral damage and women in warfare. And there's a lot of, it's emotionally extremely grueling, emotionally very powerful, but without the variation, it's one long series of laments, with a bit of variation from Cassandra when she dances on Mad. And of course the crucial difference is that it was varied by music. The chorus are singing, Cassandra's singing a parody of a wedding hymn, and the rest of it. And you really need that kind of variation to get it to come across properly.
Was that the one that was just opposite the Student Union?
The Suppliant Woman one was, yes.
Yeah, the Suppliant Woman where they did because they had as close as sort of we think we can get to the actual music of it as well.
That's right, yeah.
And they had a guy called Callum Armstrong playing on the alloy.
Yes.
Sort of the double pipe thing, which would have actually, we think,
yes,
or do we know?
We know.
We know.
So we actually know quite a bit about this. Dr. Crease, David Crease, he's one of the experts on ancient Greek music. There aren't too many of them around, but sorry again.
Got a budding expert.
Yes, that's right. Because that's
why
you delayed your final year. That's right. Yeah. But it's fascinating because we do actually have fragments of, even from tragedy, a fragment of Euripides' Orestes with this surviving in papyrus, and they now have worked out how it should be performed.
I've heard it as well,
and it's pretty impressive actually. Yes,
singing
and it completely transforms the whole thing. It's not music like Ed Sheeran, obviously, but it's very sort of striking, and you do realise that you actually need that, especially for the chorus in Greek tragedy. But one of the things about that production was that you had this close to the sort of the genuine music, and the other thing that they did, which paralleled what happened in Athens, is that the chorus, the actors were professionals, but the chorus each time was made up of local amateur dramatic interested people in the 3 places that they did this, and they went there 3 weeks in advance and they trained them. Of course, this is what happened in Athens. Your chorus was always citizens with good voices who got trained for the production, but they weren't professionals. And I thought that was really interesting. And the weird thing about that was, their diction, their delivery, you could hear and make out almost all the words. That's very rare with professional actors and singers nowadays. And that was really striking. They'd obviously trained them really well.
Yeah.
Sorry, just getting off on my particular hobby horse. But,
No, yeah. So, one thing we did in college to like make it, instead of just reading it, we'd assign like a character to someone as we're reading it, and then our teacher like made us do funny voices.
Right.
A lot of ones that kind of were borderline voice, but I always played the women. And I always did the woman, the mum from Life of Brian. Alright, Brian. I always did that.
He's not the Messiah.
He's not the Messiah. I always did that.
For Aristophanes, that would certainly work.
Yeah. Well, we did Plautus. Is it Plautus?
Plautus, yeah.
We did the Brothers Menitmus.
Oh right, yes, yeah.
Which I think's really good.
I think it's. I mean, again, Plautus, you have to see it.
Yeah.
Because you don't get the jokes on the page in the same way at all. So.
Yeah. So, and then we kind of did our own performance, but just like to ourselves. So like. So a few of us were actors in like the drama bit, and then the rest of the audience were just people in our class.
Yeah.
But we did that. But a lot of people forget that is it a comedy of errors?
Yes.
It's based off of.
That's right. Yes.
Brothers
Yeah.
Menitmus.
So, yeah, that's right. So,
And have you ever watched Inside Number 9?
Which one?
Inside Number 9. It's like a TV show.
I'm afraid I haven't actually. Sorry.
There's an episode called Hotel Zanzibar, and it's an adaptation of Comedy of Errors, cool. Which is then an adaptation of the Brothers Menitmus, and it's really good. And it's a really good idea. It's like
I didn't know that. I've seen that episode, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the whole idea is that there's twins, the brothers Menitmus, and one of them's really rich.
Yes.
And they were separated at birth. One of them's really rich, and one of them isn't, and they get mixed up.
Yes, I forget the details, but
yeah, I forgot. And it's supposed to be in Greece. It's set in Greece, but it was written by Plautus.
Yeah, I mean, almost all the Latin comedies were kind of set. Well, sorry, sweeping generalisation, but I think a lot of them are set in Greece.
Yeah, which comes up to one of my questions. We've done nearly an hour, which has gone by really quickly. Yeah,
it's bedtime.
One of them is, what's better, Greek or Roman literature? Which is an interesting question. Very hard to answer, I think, but will cause great discussion, hopefully.
Well, I mean, as I have made clear, I'm clearly deeply biased on this one. I mean, if I'm forcing myself to be fair, it depends on what kind of genre you're looking at. I mean, I think it's pretty universally agreed that Greek tragedy is a long way ahead of Roman tragedy, for some of the reasons that I've said. Comedy, I suppose it depends what you like, really.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the Aristophanic comedy does depend on this, this absurdity, which I think is much more popular now. But that's why Roman comedy was so much more popular for a long time. Because it fitted into this slightly more genteel, but you can still make fun out of it sort of situation.
There was a lot more. I think there was a lot less rules with Aristophanes.
Yes. Oh yeah. Hardly any.
Well, that's the thing. Like now, is like when we were reading it. Because like a lot of comedy like now in modern, there's a lot of rules. You can't say this, you can't say that. Yeah. But with Aristophanes, it's like anything goes.
Yes, yeah.
And that's what we were so surprised at. Is like how rude it was. It's like.
Yes, I mean, there's no limits on that.
There's absolutely none at all.
And it's also, I mean, like Wasps finishes incredibly bizarrely with this group of dancing crabs coming on stage, which has no connection with anything which has happened before. You're just thinking, what?
Yeah.
So, but it's just in a way, it's just a fun way of finishing off a play, which is.
Yeah. But there were more. I think there were a lot more rules with the Roman.
I think there probably were, or at least there were. You could derive rules from them. Aristotle had a lot to answer for, although not so much in comedy, actually, in fairness. But I think then things like oratory, it's much more evenly divided. And I mean, obviously, you ask Professor Visser, he will, of course, say that's and he might well be right. Actually, I've never really warmed to Demosthenes myself.
No.
And Lysias I like, but it's a very different type of. I mean, Cicero is. I mean, it's virtuoso oratory stuff, and
Yeah.
I can understand why people wanted to kill him. I think it's in the Pro Caelio, it's the young, I forget his name, because with the young member of the the prosecuting team, and he's really humorously patronising towards him. And he just says, "I'm going to kill him. I'm going to knife him when I get out of this courtroom."
Yeah.
But history, not really cool. I mean, I think Thucydides is brilliant. And likewise,
I've been reading Thucydides recently, and some things that he says are just so, like, they're just so relevant to
in terrifying ways.
So like, this person has said this, and that he sort of like tries to come up with it, tries to assess his sources, but just things that he says. He's got a nice understanding of human nature.
Oh yeah.
I think he says quite a lot like, this is what they said, but realistically, it's probably not how they felt. It's like, it's like when it's like, why did the Peloponnesian War start? He says, well, they can say as many reasons as they like, but realistically, it's because the Spartans were scared of what the Athenians were doing. And then there's one point when he quotes the Spartans as saying, it's the Athenians. They were like, when they're trying to defend the fact that they've got their empire, it's like, well, yeah, perhaps we were wrong to like take the empire, but now we've got it. It would be catastrophic to get rid of it.
Yeah.
You're there like,
it may
I can imagine saying
it would
that.
certainly be dangerous to get rid of it. I think it's Pericles actually who says that. Surprisingly.
My favourite is my favourite writer is Aristophanes, because it's so funny. It's like, because I love comedy.
I
absolutely love comedy, and the ruder and like horrible it gets, the funnier I find.
I think what I was going to say is that the Romans give us the novel.
Yeah.
And speaking of the novel, the Satyricon, or the Satirica by Petronius, Jimmy, I think if you ever got the chance to read it, you would like it.
Have you not read that?
I've not read it.
It's
No.
brilliant.
No, I am.
The look of disbelief in Louis' eyes.
I just assumed you would, because that's just so you.
It's so up Jimmy's alley. So it's an Odyssey-like quest of the main character, Encolpius. So he loses his potency, so he goes on this epic quest to be able to get it up. Because he's fallen in love with this young boy, and he would like that power back.
That does sound like me.
It's one of the ones. I should probably. It's going back to the Brothers Menachmi, but story I can't resist telling. It was now the professor of Greek and head of department at Glasgow University, Kostas Paniatakis. He studied very much this kind of thing, and we met when we were postgraduates in Scotland. I was at St Andrews, and he very quickly worked out that I was easily embarrassed and a bit prudish about this kind of thing. So he used to, when he was talking about Satyricon, he used to sort of show me the pictures deliberately. But the story about the Brothers Menachmi is one of the things we did. We had these reading parties away at the outdoor centre on the shores of Loch Tay, and he and Toph Marshall, who's now in Canada from Edinburgh, they were obviously very good at this. So I think they were playing the two Brothers Menachmi, and the story Kostas always took great delight in telling people was that the first few days he met me, he ended up wearing my nightdress because I had this very large, voluminous nightdress, and they needed a dress, but there's a scene in that one where the rich brother dresses up in this.
Oh yeah.
So he borrowed mine, and so taken out of context, this fact is actually quite embarrassing. But it was. This was just a reading amongst sort of students and friends, but again that play came and it was absolutely hilarious.
Because you focus on different things when it's either being played or you're playing it. You sort of think about, but how would they have said that line?
Exactly.
It's not just a piece of text on a page. There's so many more dimensions.
That's probably right. And for reasons aforementioned, I've never read the Satyricon, but it's clearly it was a very clever, sophisticated piece of writing. A bit like what you were saying about the
epic. It's very clever. It's very funny. There's all kinds of crazy things like birds being baked into pies, and the pie gets cracked and it will come out, which nursery rhyme. It's really funny.
Actually,
I think you would really like it. And it parodies epic as well. And there's a bit where obviously Petronius' contemporary Lucan wrote The Civil War, this massive epic novel, well, not novel, epic, about the Civil War. And
Really?
This character who goes along, he thinks it's it basically, he thinks he knows everything, and he stands and does this recital going, oh no, this has happened on the beach, and it's just absolutely taking the piss out of his contemporaries. He really doesn't care. It's just a funny book that he's writing, but at the same time it's really clever when you get all the little things.
Yeah, satire in that particular way, and that does seem to have been I mean, if not a Roman invention, because I think it probably previously existed, but in that particular sort of sense, the Romans clearly perfected it in a series of ways. Roman characters were always good at tearing things down, I always think.
Actually in Seneca.
Sorry, like I say, I'm seriously biased.
So the opening of the Apollocantosis is set out like it's a historical work. So you know, I am Herodotus, here is my inquiry, like all the I'm going to tell the truth sort of thing. Seneca goes, well, here's my truth, and if you don't believe me, who cares? And he said, like, I have my sources, but you're not going to make me tell you them, so I shan't. It's really good.
Yeah.
The sass.
Yeah.
People are very good at that. I mean, that's. I mean, I think it's to some extent. I think you find yourself to whichever side naturally appeals to your temperament, and the. For me, the greater humaneness and balance of Homer and the Iliad, as opposed to the however you interpret it, but the very definitely pro-Roman sort of stance of you don't get quite the same breadth and roundedness sort of given to Aeneas's opponents in the Iliad as you do to possibly to Dido, but even there it's slightly dubious. But I think it's very much a sort of a personal thing and what sort of attracts you. And there's some people who like both equally. And, as I say, I mean, what was really interesting for me was that because I'd learnt Latin so late, I came to. I had obviously slightly embarrassingly done bits of Seneca and Virgil for my PhD, despite not technically being able to read it properly. As indeed my external examiner pointed out. I think was it the Latin here is horribly mangled and mistranslated was the still passed. But coming to Latin literature, properly studying it that late was actually because that meant I got round the thing of directly comparing them, because by that stage I was old enough to know that they were just doing something completely different. So Roman tragedy is 600 years 500 years after most of our Greek tragedy. So why? I mean, it's as different as Shakespeare and Alan Bennett. It's in terms of time. That probably more so. So why would you expect it to be doing the same? It's just because it's doing the same stories that you match it up. And I think that's actually quite useful, just you bear in mind. And and Virgil was doing something very different. Obviously using Homer, but. Sorry, that's my lecturer voice again.
It is quite easy to sort of lump the Greeks and Romans together.
It is,
just because sort of in terms of us looking back, they're similar.
It's the classical world.
Yeah, we'll do that, and then there's also like a bit of the Egyptians in there because they were old. It's like
actually right. And even when you're talking about Greece, I mean, which Greeks do you mean? I mean, Spartans, Athenians, Syracuses. It's a very very varied world.
Going back to the Roman versus Greek thing, I just think the Greeks. I haven't read much Roman sort of like literature and like many Roman plays and comedies and things, but there's just the Greek understanding of humanity and the presentation of it on the stage, particularly Trojan women. By that's embarrassing. Euripides.
Well done. Yes. You can come back. You can come back for your final year.
43%.
You're almost going out that window.
But there's a scene in that so Troy has fallen, and it's what happens to the women afterwards, and it all takes place on the beach.
Yes.
I think, and the Trojan women have been like led down and they're about to be taken away by the Greeks. And there's this one scene when Andromache, Hector's wife, comes in with her son Astyanax, and then it comes to pass that the Greeks have decided that they're going to kill Astyanax because he's sort of a Trojan male, and they're like, no, we're going to completely wipe the bloodline from the earth. And then it sort of goes off stage, and he gets you don't see it, but he gets thrown from the walls of Troy. Which would do a significant amount of damage to who I always imagine Astyanax as about sort of an 8-year-old boy.
Yeah, but it's 6-ish. I always think.
6.
Slightly older in Seneca, but sorry.
But and then it comes back like on the shield, and the body is on stage on this shield. It's this incredibly emotional moment. But then also in that same play, you have what I think is one of the funniest moments in Greek literature that I've
I
read
know
so
what's
far.
coming. I know what's
yeah,
coming.
I've told the story to Katie, I imagine, about 9 times. But is when Menelaus comes to like claim Helen and take her back to Sparta, and Hecuba, who's the old queen of Troy, is saying like, Menelaus, like, if you kill her here, but if you're gonna take her back, then fine, but don't take her back on the same ship as you. At which point Menelaus turns around and goes, why? Has she gained weight?
Yes, that's right.
And it's just there like, this is such a serious situation. Just throwing that in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's very unexpected in that play, because it's not, as you'll have gathered, there's not a lot of humour.
No, yeah.
Because it's about the fate of the
yes.
women, either slaves or
I
dead.
thought it was the bit where Hecuba is saying, like, kill her sort of thing. And Helen is about to be put to death. And she just pops a breast out of her dress. And it's like, oh no, that's it, she can live.
Yeah, she's then like, how could you destroy something this beautiful?
Yeah.
It doesn't actually happen in that play.
Oh, does it not?
No.
Oh.
I mean, she no. I mean, it happens elsewhere in the myth, and it's one of the stories that's told. I think it gets referred to elsewhere in Greek tragedy. I don't think in that play actually, because I mean, Menelaus goes off. I mean, the point about the end of that is that he sounds as if he's determined to take her back to Greece and kill her, but we all know it's not going to happen. And Hecuba, that's why she says, "Don't take her back on the same ship," because she knows it's not going to happen. And but yeah, there is, and I think it's one of these things where it's a myth, which that part of it, where she bears her breast to him and he sort of melts to his knees. I think that's sort of probably meant to be in the background of the audience's mind, even though it doesn't actually happen in the play. So that was again my comments in margin on it. This doesn't actually happen. Sorry, but yeah, I mean, it's and you say it's very striking because you get that. And it is a sort of a knowledge of human nature. That's Hecuba playing off the fact that men are, especially men like Menelaus, are susceptible to this kind of sort of weakness.
Started a war to get a woman back.
Yeah. And I mean, but actually, even with that, I mean, the Greeks killing Astyanax. I mean, in the lament scene, Hecuba says, why did you do this? And was it because you were afraid he'd raise Troy up? And that was stupid. It was never going to happen. Yeah. But actually, she's expressed these hopes for him herself earlier in the play. Yeah. So I mean, the point is, in fact, the Greeks aren't being stupid or even necessarily cowardly. It's just what they're doing is completely inhumane, and they're supposed to be the civilized ones. So the payoff is, if you're going to be civilized, sometimes you have to choose and take the risk of what might happen in the future. I think that's what's going on there. Yeah. But that's actually a really very telling point about human nature and this idea.
Yeah.
And it ties in with Thucydides, the Melian debate, where you get this. I mean, almost certainly in his version of what the Athenians said to the Melians when they didn't want to join their side, is much more ruthless than any Athenians would have actually openly admitted to at the time. But you get that sort of playoff where the Melians sort of say, surely, it's a principle in life that you behave fairly decently to other people, because one day it's going to come back and bite you on the butt, essentially. And the Athenians basically say, well, leave us to worry about that. We're not really that concerned. But it's similar to what you're getting in the Trojan Woman, is exploring the same kinds of ideas. So.
Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wrap up now, because it's an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh
goodness!
I feel like we could talk for hours and hours, because it's been really good.
Yeah, it's been really interesting.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Before we go, sorry,
I'll say that in a minute, Kate.
I was going to say, you can't make me break my promise.
I'll come. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Susanna.
Well, no, thank you. It's been really good fun. Really I've learned a lot this tonight, actually.
Yeah, so have I. Yeah. No, it's been really good. Hopefully, you can come back again.
Well, if you'd like me to, I'd like to.
Yeah. No, I'd love that. Yeah. And Katie, now you may.
Yay!
I didn't want to be.
I didn't want to be a liar.
Any notices for the end of assembly?
Yeah.
So, if you want to come along to a meeting, location to be decided on the 28th of November, our 2019 trip is going to be to Herculaneum and Naples. So, hope to see you all.
Excellent.
That came out more scary than sort of.
Yeah.
Ghost.
Oh my god.
Do you know yet when it's going to be? Or
it'd be the 1st or the 5th of April.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Have you been to Naples before? Just a quick question. Oh my gosh, right, okay. So basically, pizza was invented in Naples. They've got this one place, and you go in and you can get one, like a margarita or a vegetable pizza, and then a Diet Coke or a water. and they just rifle people through, and they get through about like hundreds of people at like an hour, and it's the best pizza you'll ever taste.
It's gonna be like the Euros place.
First night, I'm gonna be get a cap on. Group leader's gonna have group leader on the front. I'm gonna have a flag in the air. I'm gonna get everyone to follow me down to the pizza place. I'm gonna take everyone there. We're all gonna queue up and get a pizza.
Right, I'm salivating now.
Yeah.
Also,
it's amazing.
Naples Archaeological Museum has got the best room on the second floor, right packed away in the back left corner.
We all
Because
know
it's
what
quite
room he's
specifically
talking about.
the pornography room. The historical.
But we
historical.
are all the same. I'm sorry.
How old were you when you were taken into this room?
15?
I
Is
can
that
imagine
is that the room of...
Where
It's
it's
true,
like
men are all the same.
candles. Yeah.
yeah. I'm looking forward to that room. I'm going to make a fool of myself now, but is the picture of Alexander, the painting?
the mosaic.
The mosaic.
Isn't that in Naples?
It's in the museum, but it's not in the room.
It's not in that room.
It's not.
It's on the same floor.
It's on the same floor.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really
Do
looking
you know, I
for.
never knew that mosaic was there. This is the one with the Battle of what's its name?
Yeah. It's just sort of
Yeah.
like just put on the wall, like, oh yeah.
Which
that's
looks
there.
like it's being chipped off, and like Alexander's face has almost been chipped off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we were saying on that podcast previously about the impact of seeing things that you've seen in books or heard
Yeah.
about first, and there's nothing quite matches that moment when you first see it.
Yeah.
So it's the
The
death mask of Agamemnon. Well,
yeah.
Yeah, we saw that.
Agamemnon in inverted commas is in the Archaeological Museum in Athens, and it's just sort of packed in with
I
everything
know.
else. It's just there on the side. And it's like, oh yeah, this might have belonged to Agamemnon, but probably not. And you're there like,
Yeah.
what?
You storm
You
streets
just
like
wanted to
that.
say the line.
Yeah.
But I actually, because my first visit to Greece, I wrote this unsurprisingly really long diary. But that was the point I sort of made. If this was the British Museum, it would have a separate room, it would have special lighting, it would have sort of this. And this is just, they've got so much there. This is just something else that they've got amongst all these brilliant things.
Of, things the British Museum have that should be in Athens.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, get onto that, and
Whoa.
it's things that everybody else in the world also has, which should be in Athens.
Yeah.
If you've been to Berlin, you stop feeling quite so guilty about this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Pergamon altar is bigger. It's huge. So,
They don't just steal things; they steal whole buildings.
well, yeah, like there's sort of all those Babylonian palaces that they've got there as well.
Yeah.
Spectacular. But,
Didn't know that.
Oh yeah, very
quite
impressive.
I've got my
That's,
picture with them. I'll show you after.
Right, and also, should we talk about the Saturnalia as well?
Oh yeah, tickets are still available.
I've bought mine.
Good boy.
I'll member's price because I'm a member.
And ideally,
Yeah.
if you're
Wink.
coming, please could you buy it in the next week or two?
Yeah.
Because hopefully we'd like to hand out drinks vouchers so everyone can get a cocktail on us.
Oh,
wow,
Great.
that's very generous.
Yeah, so 6th of December is the Saturnalia, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're looking at me there.
Yeah.
You're like, is it? Well, yeah, 6th of December. We'll start in the Armstrong building first at 7:30. So if you're available.
Yes, regrettably, well, we won't go there.
Oh,
We're
okay.
sad.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh no.
It's Anthony Cleopatra live cinema
yeah.
relay, and we can't do it a different night because they only do it once.
So
Yeah,
cocktails
that's
aren't your thing, Anthony and Cleopatra.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry about that. It's just nothing I
There's
can do
two
about
types
it.
of
That's
people,
fine.
I hear. Cocktails or Anthony and Cleopatra.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because Anthony would have been very much a cocktail person, as indeed would have Cleopatra. So.
No, but yeah, we'll end it now. So thank you very much, everyone, coming on. Thank you again, Dr.
Well, thank you.
Dr. Phillippo. And everyone say goodbye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.